So we're seeing resilience in the Indian economy that has been built up over the past decade. Recovery after a previous crisis, India is bouncing back in some respects quicker than it did previously. The rupee has depreciated by just about 10% over the course of this year. That might sound like a large number, but relative to many other emerging market peers, India hasn't fared that badly. Our forecast for this fiscal year for GDP growth is 6.9%. It's slightly higher than we were not long ago. And the main reason for that is the recent GDP outcome. What is different about now and perhaps where India was 10 years ago? A term that August used was resilience. So we're seeing resilience in the Indian economy that has been built up over the past decade. And evidence of that is recovery after a previous crisis. India is bouncing back in some respects quicker than it did previously. There was capital outflows, but you can see compared to a period 10 years ago that we referred to as a taper tantrum, and also a sell-off period about 5 years ago, India has recovered quickly. Portfolio flows left India, and they've returned to India very quickly as well over the past several months. And part of the reason for that is India has been improving its capital mix. Foreign direct investment is something that is still a small share overall, but is improving over the past few years, and that helps with reducing volatility in its external accounts. An increase in rates in the US and other advanced economies lead to a depreciation in the rupee. The rupee has depreciated by just about 10% over the course of this year. That might sound like a large number, but relative to many other emerging market peers, India hasn't fared that badly. And similarly, I mentioned that inflation is affected, and it's a slightly technical chart. All it shows there on the right side is that inflation does spike a little bit, and then gradually does come back once policy responses come into play. Right, so something worth noting and monitoring, but not to be too concerned about at this stage. Across a number of macro fiscal financial indicators, India is more resilient and slightly better off relative to its peers than it was 10 years ago and as it is now. A translation of the reddish yellow colors on the left and the colors on the right, all it means is relative to where the mean and median is for all of these indicators, India has improved, stayed the same, or is slightly worse. And that's all it's showing, and you can see across fiscal, external, financial indicators, India has developed a lot of resilience over the last 10 years. Getting back to the title, it was Navigating the Storm. Our assessment is that India is well placed to navigate global headwinds. Of course, the government has taken a number of measures to sort of buffer against the headwinds, but all the steps taken over the last 10 years, how it's responding to immediate developments, all of these are playing a role in helping India navigate global headwinds. I won't repeat the key messages. I think they're quite clear. I think in the interest of time, I'm going to move on to the final point, which is our forecasts. Our forecast for this fiscal year for GDP growth is 6.9%. It's slightly higher than we were not long ago, and the main reason for that is the recent GDP outcome demonstrated that point that we've been making about robust domestic activity, private consumption and investment activity being quite strong, and a surprise on the positive side as well. So the headline, while we do see growth to ease compared to last year, that easing is largely as a result of those external conditions, and again, less so than we're seeing in other emerging markets.